I've already read through some of this chapter on my own. I'm reading through it again and I'm making my comments public. First, I need to say I personally have a very significant problem and personal disagreement with the idea of using religious or spiritual iconography or evaluations or premises or precepts in consideration of financing modalities. But as I read through this the first time, the manner in which he discusses this specific chapter actually evokes in me what would have been a kind of consideration I would have hoped to have engaged both conversationally and practically with other people concerning my own spiritual or faith practice. And because of my personal feelings about allowing for that to be subsumed within the realm of finance entirely, I am not going to share that now, but I am going to acknowledge it exists. Secondly, one of the things that is concerning is a explication. What does he mean specifically when he says, quote, but few states or cities escape payment of some such tax to the banker on every loan it makes, end quote. Is he describing a specific tax under the understanding of the power of Congress to tax and the state power of individual states and political subdivisions to tax, or is he using tax metaphorically? This is a very important point that, honestly, when I first read this, I was not able to distinguish. Because I understand the context of the writer that occurred later in his life, the consideration of trying to evaluate where he was coming from at the time is different. But it's important. The understanding of the taxation as a power of the state and what it means for the state to engage responsibly in setting and effectuating tax policy, but then understanding that people that are not bound to the same constitutional duties that people that are representing the people by virtue of their role in the state are also to be availed of the benefits of taxation is very, very concerning and a very significant matter. If there is some other layer of consideration or contemplation between the specific role that the state, including the state through its representatives or the representatives of the people engaged in state roles, perform in connection with individuals that operationalize the specific system of taxation. This is a very important matter that we as the people need to be able to know about and need to be able to be apprised of. There are a variety of particulars about what that means and then who and how it would be effectuated that impacts all of our lives, especially if we are discussing matters that are distinguishing between the securities such as municipals or what would be involved in corporate securities and how they circulate or may be connected to the circulation of securities such as municipal securities, which would have the attendant expectations of obligation by members of the public. The second matter of consideration has to do with these concepts of the commission and the understanding of the role of commissioning in a form of provision of a sort of insurance or concept of credibility or creditability of the individual banker or broker. And I think one of the things he's trying to say when having a substantial profit is not necessarily a bad thing, isn't because he is attempting to make some justification for the exploitation of capitalism. It is because of an understanding that based upon the form of information and the amount of information that must be necessarily available in order to make appropriate decisions, including in recommending concepts of how sustainable or how appropriate a particular investment is for a particular situation, that there also necessarily needs to be available some sort of capacity to draw on resources, almost a form of reserve, in the event that something unexpected occurs or something happens. And so it's important to be able to provide coverage to that which is vulnerable or that would be more capable of being exploited at a higher social cost, were there not to have been available some other resources for covering that, including temporarily. What is it about this decision making process that would then identify the kind of credibility of the individual that would be put in that position, or the grouping or organization of individuals that would be put in those positions? And how is it capable to be communicated with people so that we're not disappearing or engaging in a process of invisibilizing all of the details associated with the business operations in order to justify allowing somebody to accumulate a disproportionate amount of personal income or even personal credit because the seediness of it or the potential negative implications of the kind of information that one needs to access to make the correct decision in the moment is one that other people may not want to have to deal with. And so there then becomes, well, something that will be mentioned later, which is not mentioned here. One of the things he says that was very surprising to me is at the time he wrote this book, at one of the major financial institutions in New York City, that a majority of the shareholders at that time were actually women. This was during a time frame where women were engaging in purchases of stock as a form of participation. This is not something we learn about these days. So what were the implications in that, especially in regards to a consideration of allowing for women to maintain or to be identified as maintaining a very important role in society, but also allowing women to have economic independence as well as economic power to make those decisions without exposing them or the people they're working with to the kinds of compromises that someone might attempt to compel out of them because they haven't established and maintained an appropriate taxation policy. We will see about these matters more together moving forward.